The Ukrainian Navy has launched a kamikaze drone strike on an elite Russian Special Forces unit stationed on the Sivash drilling platform in the Black Sea. Video footage released in social media captures the moment of the strike. It is reported that Russian reconnaissance and surveillance equipment, as well as an anti-tank missile system crew, were destroyed during the attack. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian media reported that in an attempt to pass off another defeat as a victory, Russians are spreading a video allegedly showing the destruction of a Ukrainian Navy boat by a Lancet UAV, when in fact the Ukrainian military successfully used a kamikaze drone. Earlier, Ukrainian Navy conducted a missile strike that disabled the Oryol thermal power plant and an electrical substation in Russia's Novobryansk. Ukrainian forces have intensified airstrikes on Russian energy infrastructure in occupied Ukrainian lands as well as deep in Russian territories in an attempt to undermine Kremlin's funding of its war of invasion. The attacks come amid the stalemate in the peace negotiations that have been brokered by the US.
The economic hardships in Russia due to the war in Ukraine are causing increasing anger among the country's population, especially in the country's far eastern regions. The population is responding with mass protests against the attempts of Vladimir Putin's government to finance the war in Ukraine by raising taxes and tariffs. In this case, the Russian government is pushing back the introduction of increased recycling fees for passenger cars with engine power over 160 HP by another month. The Ministry of Industry and Trade announced this. The new tariffs will come into effect on December the 1st, not November, the Ministry of Industry and Trade reported. This is the second time the government has postponed this initiative, which has sparked relatively significant protests in the Far East due to the sharp increase in the cost of imported cars. The postponement was once again explained as taking into account the interests of those car buyers who had previously ordered their cars and were awaiting delivery. Otherwise, they would have to pay an additional fee of several 100,000 to several million rubles to use the car they had already purchased. Officials again emphasized that the sharp increase in recycling fees should not affect a large group of people, as cars with engine power below 160 horsepower account for up to 80% of the vehicle market. However, car owners in Russia's Far East, where mass protests against the government's initiative have already taken place and are planned, categorically disagree with this logic. Many in the region make money by importing cars into Russia. In Vladivostok, for example, communists are attempting to secure approval for a second mass rally of 500 people, but the mayor's office is refusing, citing the fact that United Russia members will be holding a rally on the topic of fighting racism at the same time at the designated location. But the Vladivostok mayor's office refused to allow the communists to hold a new mass rally against the recycling fee in Vladivostok on November the 9th. As reported, the reason is that another rally, a United Russia rally, has allegedly already been scheduled for this location, and it's on a completely different topic: the fight against racism and fascism. and the communists were not offered any other meeting places at all. The applicants, Primorsky Krai Legislative Assembly Deputy Alexander Sustov and District Deputy Oleg Grigoriev, reported the refusal. As a reminder, when explaining the rationale behind the tariff increases, the Ministry of Industry and Trade stated that there were measures to support Russian automakers, primarily Avtovaz, a key enterprise in the Samara region, which had already switched to a 4-day work week due to a demand crisis. But even more outraged were Minister Alikhanov's statements that the new tariffs would support Chinese automakers who had decided to organize screwdriver production of their cars in Russia, creating jobs there. At the same time, there is no recycling fee procedure for cars in Russia as such, despite the existence of a tariff. Promises to the Kremlin from the Russian command that the front line in Ukraine would crumble in the fall remained unfulfilled. According to Reuters, in early August, General Staff generals promised President Vladimir Putin that the Ukrainian armed forces' defenses would collapse within the next 2 to 3 months. That is, by early November at the latest. But the deadline is running out, and the Russian army has failed to achieve any significant gains. Since the beginning of June, when the summer offensive began, Russian troops have taken control of only 0.4% of Ukrainian territory. At this rate, it will take Russia more than 100 years to completely capture the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. Although the front has not been broken through, Russian troops are holding the initiative, albeit at a snail's pace, notes military expert Markus Riesner, a lecturer at the Military Academy in Wiener Neustadt. In recent weeks, we have seen a steady deterioration of the situation around Pokrovsk, he notes. In October, the Russian army managed to enter one of the last major cities in Donbass under Ukrainian control. An 11,000-strong force was deployed to encircle the city, which served as a logistics hub for Ukrainian troops. In total, Russian generals have amassed 170,000 troops in Donbass. Pokrovsk may fall in the coming days or weeks, but as with Bakhmut or Avdiivka, this is unlikely to be an operational breakthrough for the Russian army. Riesner believes Pokrovsk, which had a pre-war population of nearly 400,000 and produced nearly 2 million tons of coal annually, has been reduced to ruins, losing 99% of its population as a result of shelling by the Russian army, which has been trying to take the city since early 2024. Besides Pokrovsk, there are 5 other hotspots: Kupiansk, Lyman, Seversk, Novopavlovka and Konstantinovka, the expert lists. Ukraine, thanks to the use of drones, is capable of constructing a very well-planned defense and compensates for its lack of resources, especially manpower. The problem is that Russia is trying to achieve an effect along virtually the entire front, launching simultaneous strikes. If this is not effectively countered, sooner or later, city after city will be bombed, leading to their surrender and fall. Although the front line in Ukraine has remained virtually unchanged since late 2022, Putin is more determined than ever to continue the war. Sources familiar with US intelligence told NBC. Washington believes the Russian president is seeking to justify the losses suffered and seize even more Ukrainian territory, despite the worsening economic situation and growing public fatigue. At the same time, Putin is preparing for potential new conflicts and is secretly trying to build up resources, including military potential. Riesner believes whether these efforts will be successful will become clear later, when we learn, for example, about the effectiveness of sanctions. The fact remains that Russia is preparing for a new, protracted war. The failure of the August promise demonstrates the inability of the Russian command to achieve strategic goals and confirms the high combat effectiveness of Ukrainian troops. which continue to hold key positions on the front. For this reason, the dictator is angry with the generals, and it is not excluded that he will start repressions against them.